Hi, I'm Megan and welcome to my kitchen. In today's What's for Dinner video, I'll be sharing with you what meals we had this past week. Our dinners were easy to make, budget friendly, and delicious. So if you're looking for some weeknight meal ideas for your family, just keep watching. Dinner this first night was the day before Easter, and so I'd been really busy that day cooking and cleaning, and so when it came time for dinner, I did not feel like cooking, and I didn't want to, dirty any more dishes up, so we just did Popeyes. We have not had Popeyes in forever. I got their two-piece fried chicken meal. It came with one side, so I got their fries. I mean, their fries are hot and fresh. I think they're delicious, and they really remind me of the fries from Checkers or Rally's. And then I really wanted some of their macaroni and cheese. I ordered a side of it, and honestly, I was kind of irked about it. It was $3 and something, almost $4 for the side. And, I know it's not clear in the picture, but if you've ever been to Popeyes, you know how small their small is. And my macaroni and cheese, no exaggeration, it was less than halfway full. Like, literally, I took like 2 bites of the macaroni and cheese and that was it. So kind of irritating, but life's too short. Moving on. Gary got their 3-piece chicken tender meal. He got fries and red beans and rice, and then he also got their chicken sandwich, the one with bacon and cheese, and it was really good. And that was our dinner that night. The next day was Easter, and if you celebrate, I hope you had a wonderful Easter. My mom and siblings came over. My dad wasn't able to. I think 2 days before Easter, he had hernia surgery, so he was not feeling, coming and sitting up and all that, but mom took him a plate. So I've shared pretty much all of this on my channel before, but I wanted to quickly go through it. I'm going to share, these are Easter traditions in our family. We make these every year. First up is my potato salad. So I take russet potatoes, wash them really well, peel them, cut them into cubes, place them into cold water, add some salt, bring them to a boil, and I boil them usually about 10 to 15 minutes, just depends on how big I cut the potatoes. You just want to cook them until they're fork tender, and then I like to drain them and rinse them in a little cold water. Now, I like to start out by making like my sauce or dressing for the potato salad before I add the potatoes, and I just eyeball everything. I make this the same way my mom and granny did. You feel free, you're in your kitchen, add whatever you like. If you don't like something, change it out for what you do like. So I'm adding some mayonnaise, yellow mustard, sweet relish. If you want to use dill, totally do that. You can also just chop up some pickles. I'm going to season this with some salt and pepper. Next, I add in some finely diced onion. I kind of play a balancing act here because my dad, and I think mom too, like the more onions the better, and Gary and I prefer not a lot of onions, so I try to have a good mix in there. And again, use whatever you like. You could add in some celery here, bell pepper. Next, I'm going to add in some hard-boiled eggs. Yes, I'm taking the easy route today and using already hard-boiled eggs from the grocery store. And what I like to do is just take the egg, place it in the egg slicer, and then take the sliced egg, rotate it, and then slice it again, and it chops it for you. So I'm going to give everything a really good mix and then add in my potatoes. I'm going to give that one final mix, and then I'm going to give it a taste, and you can adjust the seasonings at this point to your taste. Here I'm just taking a damp paper towel and kind of wiping the edge for serving, and then I am going to take a final hard-boiled egg that I'd set aside and add it on top just as a little decoration. I'm going to add a little paprika, and then that's it. You can eat this right away. You can eat it warm, but I really like to place it into the refrigerator for at least a few hours overnight if you can. That just allows all the flavors to come together. And a quick note, I am doing voiceovers. We're out of town in Kentucky, so I'm doing voiceovers at a place different than what I normally do. So I apologize if you can hear background noise or cars or, anything like that. So that aside, now we're going to make my granny's pea salad. Super easy. And again, if you don't like something or you want to change something up, you totally feel free. You don't need my permission. You're in your kitchen. If you want to change something, you change it. I'm going to add my peas to a bowl. I like to use frozen peas that I allow to thaw. I like the texture, like the little snap of the frozen, as opposed to canned peas. But again, use what you like. Next, I'm going to use some cheese. Use what you like or what you've got on hand. Today, I have some Colby, so just dice that up. Now I'm going to add in some purple onion. If I was just making this for Gary and I'd skip the purple onion, but I finally diced it, soaked it in some ice water for about 15 minutes. That just takes some of the bite out of the onion. Now I'm going to take some hard-boiled eggs and add those. And I'm not really following a recipe. Granny's quote-unquote recipe didn't call for measurements. She just added, whatever she felt like adding and how many of her people she was feeding that day. So now I'm going to add in some cubed ham and then followed by some bacon. If Granny had some left over, she'd add it in. But, again, you can skip it. Now, I'm going to season this with some salt and pepper and then add in some mayonnaise. If you're a Miracle Whip lover, use that instead. I just give that a mix. I felt like it needed a little bit more mayonnaise, so I'm going to add that in. And then just like with the potato salad, you could eat this right away, but I prefer to refrigerate it for a few hours or overnight before I serve it up. Next up, I'm going to make crock pot macaroni and cheese. I saw this maybe about 2 years or so ago on Kristen Stepp's channel. She shared the recipe. I think it was like a Thanksgiving sides video or something like that. I cannot even begin to tell you how many times I have made this recipe since then. It is one of our family favorites. It's delicious. It's easy. It's so creamy. And most of the time when you make macaroni and cheese, when you go to heat it up, it's either really dry or it separates or whatever. This macaroni and cheese, for some reason, when you warm it up, it stays creamy. I cannot recommend this recipe enough. It is so good. I'm going to start out by boiling my pasta. The recipe calls for cavatappi, and I've never really used anything other than that. I'm sure, though, you could use whatever pasta you want. You're going to cook it in some salted water according to package instructions, and then drain it really well. Now, most of the time when I make this, I will boil up the pasta like the day before, which is what I'm doing here. So I go ahead and toss the pasta in some olive oil, which the recipe does say to do. But again, I just do it the day before instead of right before I'm making it. I know usually you don't want to do that because, you want the sauce to stick to your noodles, but don't worry about it. The sauce still sticks to the noodles. So like I said, because I'm making it the day before, I let those noodles cool completely, and then I put them in a Ziploc bag and put it in the refrigerator. So the next day on Easter, I'm going to get this started, and of course the recipe will be linked down below for you. Now, to the crock pot liner, I'm going to spray it really, really well with cooking spray. The recipe strongly suggests you using a crock pot liner, and that's what I've done every other time except this one. I just didn't want to fool with it today. And I think going forward I'll do it without it. Yeah, it might be a little messier cleanup, but not as much cheese stuck to the crock pot liner. I've added in some milk and then evaporated milk. Next, I'm going to add in some Velveeta. If you are morally opposed to processed cheese, just look away. Then I'm going to add in a couple tablespoons of butter and then the cooked noodles. Now, like I said, have the recipe, and this is normally enough to feed 6 to 8 of us, 2 of which are teenagers who love macaroni and cheese and love to take leftovers home. So this is great to make for a crowd. Now I'm going to add in some shredded cheddar cheese, and then you can give this a little stir. I forgot to do it this day. Don't worry, it turned out just fine. We're going to cook this on low for an hour. After an hour, you want to go in and give it a stir, and it kind of looks like this. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, this is a hot mess. Don't worry. After another hour or so, you are going to take the lid off, give it another stir, and look how creamy. Now, because this has Velveeta and the cheese in it, once you turn the crock pot off and kind of let it sit for a couple minutes, it will thicken up. And like I said, this is delicious. And a quick note, the very first time I made this, I followed the recipe by adding, the recipe calls for salt. I can't remember the amount. I felt like it was a little too salty. So every time I've made it since then, I do not add any additional salt. Other than boiling the pasta in salted water, I don't add any other salt. There's plenty of it in the cheeses, but again, you're in your kitchen, give it a taste. If you want to add some salt, you can add it. And I let everybody just add their own pepper if they want it. Next up, I'm making deviled eggs, and once again, I'm using the store-bought, already hard-boiled and peeled. And again, yes, I know I can totally boil eggs myself. I've done it many, many times in my life, but you know what? My anxiety and trying to worry about peeling these hard-boiled eggs don't mix. So when I'm making stuff like this for holidays, when I'm using several things of hard-boiled eggs, I just buy them already peeled and hard-boiled. They're not that much more expensive than regular eggs, but if you want to boil and peel your own eggs, go for it. So all I do is take the eggs, slice them in half. I take the yolks, put them in a bowl, and then I like to take a fork and mash up the yolks. If you want to do this in a food processor so it's much more smooth, you can, of course, feel free to do that. I'm going to add in some mayonnaise. And again, just like with the potato salad, I don't measure, I just eyeball. You can use Miracle Whip if you prefer to do that. I'm going to add in some yellow mustard. You could do Dijon or spicy mustard. Now I'm going to add in that sweet relish. Again, if you want to use dill, use that. I'm going to season this up with a little bit of salt and pepper and then just get it to the consistency that you like. I felt like it needed a tiny bit more mayonnaise. So now I'm just going to take spoons and spoon the filling into the eggs. Yes, you can of course use a piping bag if you prefer to do that, but my family, we're not fancy. We're happy with just the scooped eggs. Now I like to sprinkle this with a little bit of paprika, and then I put this in the refrigerator until we're ready to serve. And to serve these up, I just put them on a pretty little platter. And for the deviled part of the deviled eggs, you just want to use something with, I mean, that's how they get their name. So you just want to use something with like some zestiness or spice to it, which is why I use the paprika, the mustard, the relish. You can use like white vinegar if you want. You can also, some people add in like Tabasco sauce or hot sauce. So again, just play around with the seasonings and the additions and make it how you like it. Next up, I've mentioned this before on my channel, this sweet potato casserole, this comes from Aldi. It only comes out around Thanksgiving, Christmas time, and I had one in my freezer from, Christmas, and so I wanted to use it up. I just baked it according to the package instructions. And then for the ham, I have shared how I make my ham before. I will link that video down in the description box below for you. This year, I took the easy route, and we just picked up a honey baked ham from the honey baked ham store. Next up, I've got some Hawaiian rolls. I saw on Instagram, I don't know, a couple weeks or so ago, which, by the way, if you don't follow me on Instagram and you have Instagram, follow me. I'm not cool enough for TikTok or Snapchat, but I do Instagram, and I'll share, some personal day-to-day life kind of things. But I saw on there a couple weeks or so ago where they said you're actually supposed to heat up Hawaiian rolls, and I was like, no. I looked at the back of the package. Sure enough, there's heating instructions on there. It just never occurred to me to do it. So I heated them up in the oven, and they were so delicious. I love Hawaiian rolls anyway, but warmed up, oh man, they were good. All right, so here's everything that I made for Easter. We've got the honey baked ham, the warmed up rolls, potato salad, deviled eggs, pea salad, the sweet potato casserole, macaroni and cheese, and then I asked my mom to bring some of her baked beans. And then for dessert, I tried a mandarin orange cake. It's also called like a pig picking cake. I don't know how I've lived in the South my entire life and never had this cake. You guys, I cannot wait to share this recipe with you. If you've never had it before, you have to make this. I've said before on my channel, I'm not a big sweets person. This cake was insanely delicious. Everybody in my family loved it, so I can't wait to share that with you. And then I just took some Oreos that I had on hand. I had some of the like white almond bark. I warmed up the almond bark, dipped the Oreos in that, added some little Easter sprinkles, and called that a day. And so yeah, that was our Easter dinner. It was delicious. Everything was so good. Dinner the next night, I just wanted something super quick and easy. Biscuits and gravy sounded good to me. So Gary ran up to the dollar store and grabbed a can of biscuits. I'm just going to bake them according to the package instructions. And then for the gravy, I've shared how I make my gravy before. Just like with most of the things I make, I just eyeball everything. And I kind of do it a little differently every time I make it, depending on what I've got on hand. Pork sausage does not agree with Gary's stomach, so I tend to use turkey sausage. I've got these turkey sausage crumbles. All I did was placed it into a skillet with some butter and cooked it on about medium heat until it was warmed all the way through and a little brown. And then once I did that, I sprinkled in my flour, cooked that for a minute, slowly whisked in the milk, added some salt and pepper, and this was my finished gravy. I just poured that on top of the biscuits, and yeah, that was our dinner this night. I only got a picture of my plate because Gary had eaten lunch late this day, and so he ate dinner much later, and I just forgot to take a picture. But yeah, that was dinner. For dinner the next night, we did just leftover ham. I had plenty of it. I'm going to start out by making some green beans. I mentioned this so many times before on my channel, but we love Mandy and the Makings green beans. I'll link that video down below. I am going to add some bacon. I've chopped this up. I'm going to add it to a pot. I've got this on about medium heat. I'm going to cook it until it is brown. And then you do not want to drain the bacon fat off of that. It's going to give your beans good flavor. We're going to add in some green beans. I'm using these Italian green beans. That's just what I prefer, but use what you prefer. Then I'm going to add in some chicken broth. I've got water and chicken bouillon powder. We're going to add in some salt and pepper, as well as garlic powder. And if I forgot to mention, the recipe, of course, will be in the description box below for you. Now we're going to add in some brown sugar, and I do like to add in a little extra brown sugar than what Mandy's recipe calls for, but, you know, just give it a taste and start out with what the recipe calls for, of course, and then, you know, if you want to add a little more, you can, of course, do that. Now we're going to bring this to a boil and then simmer this for about 30 minutes, and yeah, these green beans are delicious. They are so yummy. You got to give this a try. Next, I'm going to make some of these boxed cheesy scallop potatoes. Y'all, I don't know what I was thinking. I cooked up 2 boxes for us. I don't know why. We had so many leftover scallop potatoes. We literally ate them for like the next 3 days for lunch. But I just baked them according to the package instructions. And then here is some of that leftover honey baked ham. I also took some of the leftover Hawaiian rolls and just warmed those up in the oven, brushed them with a little bit of butter. Here are the plates. So another little mini, I almost said Thanksgiving, Easter dinner. We've got the ham, the scalloped potatoes, the green beans, and the roll. Yummy. For dinner the next night, I tried a new recipe for Greek cod tacos. The recipe will be linked down below for you. I'm going to start out by making, it's almost like a Greek style pico, if that makes sense. I have some cucumbers and tomatoes. I washed them. I'm going to use this food chopper to chop them up, and I used the smaller dice setting. I also chopped up a purple onion. So I'm going to add that to a bowl and give that a stir. And so for the recipe, I used the ingredients. I just didn't follow the measurements, if that makes sense. I just kind of eyeballed everything. So to that, I'm going to add in some extra virgin olive oil. I'm going to season this to taste with some salt and pepper, and then some sumac. This is new to me. I can't remember honestly where I got it. I may have got it on Amazon. I may have gotten it at Publix. I'm not sure. But once I've added that, I'm going to add in some fresh lemon juice as well as some chopped parsley. I believe the recipe also called for fresh mint, but we don't love fresh mint, so I skipped it. I'm going to give that a really good mix and then set that to the side while I make the rest of dinner. Next up, we're going to make, it's like lemon basil sauce. So to this bowl, I've got some olive oil. I'm going to add in some fresh chopped basil, salt, pepper, some fresh lemon juice. Give that a good stir, and then again, we're just going to set that to the side and kind of let the flavors come together while we make everything else. And I forgot to add in the minced garlic at first, so I just added that and then stirred it in. But yeah, that's the little lemon basil sauce. So now for the cod, I had some cod in my freezer. I just allowed it to thaw. If you don't want to use cod, you could use whatever fish you do prefer. You could use chicken if you don't prefer cod, you know, or fish in general. So to the cod, I'm going to add some olive oil, and then for the seasonings, I have some dried oregano, ground coriander. Next, I'm going to add the sumac, garlic powder, salt, and pepper. And if you don't want to pull all these spices out, or if you don't have some of them, you could totally just use like an all-purpose Greek seasoning, even just Cavender's, or season it up however you want. So once I've added the seasonings, and you'll see me in just a second show you the cumin, because once I set this off to the side, I saw the cumin sitting on the stove, and I was like, oh yeah, I was supposed to use that. So I did end up off camera adding that cumin. But I just rubbed the seasonings in and the olive oil on both sides of the fish and just set it off to this side, like I said, while I get everything else ready for dinner. So for the side dish, I've shared this before. I'll link the recipe below. I'm going to do some Greek style potato wedges. So here I had some baby yellow potatoes on hand, so I'm just going to use those. I just quartered them. I'm going to drizzle them with some olive oil and then season them up with some salt and pepper. And again, I'm using the same ingredients from the recipe. I'm just not using the same measurements. I'm just eyeballing it. Next, I'm adding in paprika. Normally, I use smoked paprika. Today, I just grabbed the regular. Either's fine. They're both delicious. Once I add that, I'm adding in some dried rosemary. This is actually some dried rosemary from my sister's garden that she gave to me. I've got some garlic powder, and then I'm adding in some oregano. And yeah, use whatever seasonings you can add, take away. I'm going to give that a really good mix. And then I'm going to cook these in the air fryer tonight. I put them in at 400 degrees for about 12 minutes, gave them a shake, and cooked them for another, I don't know, maybe 12 to 15 minutes, just until they were fork tender and golden brown. And then once they're done, you want to toss them in some fresh lemon zest. And I had some of that parsley left over, so I just tossed that in. I've mentioned this before, but the first time I made this, I almost skipped the lemon zest. I'm so glad I didn't. If you can, add the lemon zest. I don't know, it just kind of adds like a little sweetness almost. I know lemons are technically sour, but it just adds like a little sweetness, yumminess to the potatoes. They're so good. Now it's time to cook up the cod. I've got some olive oil in this skillet. It's been heating on medium-high heat. Once it was nice and hot, I'm going to add in the cod. And then I cooked this for about 3 to 5 minutes per side. How long it takes really depends on how thick your fish is, and then if you're using chicken versus fish. But just cook it until your protein is cooked all the way through. And then once it was done, I placed it on a plate and allowed it to rest for just maybe like 5 minutes or so. You can flake this up or chop it up if you want. I just kind of broke it apart with my tongs, as I was placing it on our pita bread. So here's everything I'm going to use to assemble the Greek style tacos. I've got that lemon basil dressing we made earlier, some crumbled feta. For the tzatziki, you can of course make your own homemade. I had some of this La Terra Fina tzatziki on hand that really needed to be used up, so I'm going to do that. We have the Greek style pico salsa that we made earlier. And then for the pita bread, I found these mini pita breads at Target, and I thought they would be perfect for the tacos. So to assemble, I just warmed up the pita, laid on some of the tzatziki that I spread out. I added the cod, drizzled on some of that lemon basil dressing, added that cucumber tomato salsa, and then added some feta cheese, added some lemons on the side, some of the Greek potatoes, and some extra tzatziki to dip the potatoes in. And this was delicious. This was so good. And it was such a fun twist on tacos. The only thing I would do differently the next time is I don't feel like I would make the lemon dressing. I just feel like it was an extra step and it didn't really add a ton of flavor. And it just kind of made the tacos a little more oily than they needed to be. So I think in the future I would just skip that step and maybe just add the basil to that cucumber pico salsa type thing. But yeah, it was a really yummy dinner. I definitely make this again. And real quick before the last dinner in this week's video, I forgot to mention I also added some Kalamata olives to Gary's tacos, but I don't love olives, so I skipped it on mine. All right, so for the last dinner, we traveled to Kentucky this day. We went up for a family Easter celebration, so we stopped that night at the Pizza Hut in town. Gary started out, he ordered their buffalo wings, and he raved about these wings. He said they were hot and fresh. We ate inside the Pizza Hut. He just loved them. And then he got the New Yorker pizza, pepperoni, and he had a couple slices, then we ate on it the next couple days while we were there. And then for me, I got their garden salad, and then I got a personal Meat Lovers pan pizza. I only ate 2 pieces of my pizza, and I ate the other 2 one of the days that we were up there for lunch. But yeah, this dinner was delicious. It was so good. All right, that is it for this week's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you liked this video and you got some dinner ideas. If you did, hit the thumbs up button below and subscribe to my channel if you're not already, and I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.